welcome to the latest edition of Ty Talks. I am going to be reviewing the latest X-Men movie, Dark Phoenix. So y'all know it's been a while. I've been sick. My voice been horrible. I didn't want to make a video like that, but I'm back. And yeah, we got a lot to talk about today. So I think before I can get started, I have to let y'all know who I am as an X-Men fan, right? Like, you need to know where I'm coming from when I'm doing this video. So X-Men is my favorite comic book heroes. And it started because I was really into the 90s animated TV show that came on Fox Kids. And so, like, that was my show. Like, I used to have my VHS and make sure I recorded every Saturday morning. Like, X-Men was my show, right? And so, though I haven't read like all of the comics, once, I figured out you can like read up online. Like, I have read everything, so much stuff about the X-Men, and so I'm very passionate about it. Then on top of the X-Men being my favorite comic book, Jean Grey and the Phoenix storyline is probably one of my favorite storylines, right? And I know in comic book history, it's one of the top 10 comic book storylines ever. And so I got a lot of feelings about this show, about this movie. I've had a lot of feelings about all of the X-Men movies. But yeah, that's the perspective I'm coming at. So that's me and what I think about the X-Men, right? And so when you think about Rotten Tomatoes score from the critics right now, this movie has a 24, which I think is horrible, right? I think the critics are being too hard. The audience give it about a 64, I think 67, which I'm more around that. I don't think the critics are saying that this is the worst X-Men movie ever, and that is a lie. There's definitely X-Men Origins was definitely worse than this. Last Stand was definitely worse than this. Apocalypse was definitely worse than this. And so I just think because this movie has went through so much, right? Like, you have a first-time director who also wrote it, and he also wrote one of the worst X-Men films, The Last Stand. He also had something to do with Fantastic Four, which was terrible, the last Fantastic Four with Michael B. Jordan. You had the reshoots in the movie being pushed off. They say they reshot the whole third act of the movie. You had the movie was originally supposed to come out in November 2018, and then it got pushed back to February. And then after the first trailer drop, like literally the day after the trailer drop, they pushed it all the way back to June. And so those throw up red flags, right? And then I would say that the critics, again, in their screening, it's out that fire alarms went off during the critic screening. So I think the critics came to want to hate this movie, and even more so when you think about the fact that regardless of what was going to happen, these was the last iteration of these characters. So if you don't know, though X-Men are Marvel comic book characters, back in the day, Marvel sold their rights to X-Men to Fox Studios, right? So that's why you've never seen any of the X-Men in any of the Avengers movie and stuff like that in the MCU. Well, if you don't know, Disney recently bought Fox. And so this was going to be the last iteration of this movie, even though all the rumors are they're saying that originally when they wrote this movie, it was written to be a two-parter. And so you had a movie that started filming back in 2017 that originally was going to be a two-part movie. So I just feel like people and critics wanted to hate this movie from the jump, which I don't think is fair. And so I done spent a lot of time right there rambling, but I'm finna jump into the movie now, okay? So you have the opening of the movie, which starts out with young Jean Grey. She's in the car with her parents. Jean is like using her powers, and they get into a wreck. A lot of people are saying it was a little like Shazam, but I think Shazam came out in April, right? Well, regardless, this movie was supposed to come out before Shazam. This movie was supposed to be out in November, so I don't think they was going to go and reshoot the beginning because of that. That was fine. What I was disappointed with is usually after the opening of an X-Men movie, you have like their opening intro and title credits, and they go like dun, 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 the song that I got at the beginning of this video, and it always ends with the X on Professor X Cerebro door. I actually missed that. They didn't have it in this movie. I missed that. I was looking forward to it, but yeah, it wasn't there. And then you jump right back into the 90s. It's the astronauts. They are going to space. And I actually thought that this sequence, the beginning of the movie, went really well. Like you saw the team coming in. You saw all of them walking in to get on the X jet. You see right from the beginning that Mystique asks Jean Grey like, "Hey, you don't feel comfortable with this, do you?" And she's like, "If you're doing it, I'm gonna go do it." Mystique is already a little weary about taking them up there, so she's got some judgments about Professor X. But they go out to space, and I think these are actually some of the most beautifully shot X-Men scenes ever in all of the movies. It looked really good up in space. The sequence was really good. The way they used their powers, like Nightcrawler, like proofing or whatever he does inside, teleporting into the space shuttle and letting Quicksilver run around and save people was cool. And then finally they took back Jean and to try to hold it because they was missing one person, right? And so apparently what they thought was a solar flare was actually the entity, the Phoenix. Even though they didn't call it that, they was like, this is an entity, and it was going towards the X-Jet, and Jean Grey called it towards her to save everybody else. And it enters her. She doesn't die. She takes it in. They go back. And apparently this is like the start. She gets it in, which goes back to the comic book roots, right? So the Phoenix Force was an entity that entered Jean Grey while they were saving some astronauts on the space shuttle. Yeah, and so that was very, for X-Men, which has not always stayed true to the comics, that was pretty accurate. It was a good adaptation of that part of the story. So they get back down on Earth. Jean is acting weird. Powers are fluctuating. And come to find out that Professor X had put in some psychic blocks in her head. And now this new power of the Phoenix Force inside of her has broken those psychic barriers. And this is where I personally run into my first problem with the film. So for anybody who don't know, there was a movie called X-Men Last Stand, right? And in this movie, Jean Grey, Professor X had built up these psychic blocks inside Jean Grey because he was so strong. And in X2, when Jean Grey saved the X-Men from a wall of water, she died. But apparently, almost like a little like in this movie, she has surrounded herself in a telekinetic cocoon, used her powers, and so she was still alive. And they found her in the beginning of X3, and they come find out Professor X had set up these blocks, and she had got this dual personality, and so she went mad, right? And she killed him, killed a lot of other people and all that. She killed Cyclops, like she went bad. Well, if you don't see, well, continuity is one of the issues in the X-Men. And so that story was in the continuity, right? Then you have Days of Future Past, which has this younger Charles Xavier. But in that movie, he connected telepathically with his older self. So he saw, or he should have known, he got a vision. Yeah, because they showed it in that movie. If you go back, watch Days of Future Past, they showed it in the movie how it led to that point and how Jean Grey like went wild and like killed everybody. So in my head, I'm trying to figure out why this Charles Xavier, James McAvoy's Charles Xavier, after he's already seen this vision of he made this mistake in the future and he with Jean, that he will still go back and create this lie in her head about her and her father, and put up these psychic walls that's like not true. Like he still went and did it. And so that just blows my mind when he literally saw what she did. X-Men Last Stand took place in 2006, but like what he did was even worse than that version of himself. So I don't understand as a character and story-wise why he would go and do that. But he did it. That's one of my problems with the story. So this happens because she technically had killed her mom. And he erased that her father even existed in her head. But when these psychic breaks are coming through, she starts hearing her father's voice, who's actually alive. So she goes to his house. Bam, same scene from X-Men Last Stand, because in X-Men Last Stand, while Jean Grey, after she has woken up and realized Professor X had lied to her, went to her childhood home. Same thing. They have a fight out there, and this was another part that I actually like. The team sequences in this movie and the action was actually really good. So Storm using her powers, Nightcrawler using his powers, the fight at Jean Grey's house, beautifully done, right? Until we get to Mystique dying, which, I mean, I was happy for because I don't like Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique. Mystique has never been that significant in the X-Men universe in the comics as she has been in these movies, and they only made her like that because Jennifer Lawrence was playing it. And so I'm happy that she was gone. It was probably the best she had did in a while, which probably because she only was in it for like first third of the movie. But so Jean Grey accidentally kills Mystique and flies off because she is like so upset. And then we start to go to another one of my problems with the movie. So then we have Jean go see Magneto, which for me as a character doesn't make sense, but she goes see Magneto. He's asking her whose blood is like on her, why it don't make sense why she wouldn't have changed clothes or why she wouldn't have tried to get the blood off her. But she's playing these emotional elements pretty well. But she goes see Magneto, and the military comes. I guess they found her there, and she comes out and she starts attacking the soldiers. And basically, her and Magneto are like fighting over this helicopter. Finally, she's trying to like lift it up and like swing it away, and he's using his magnetism powers to like hold it down. And he finally gets the cops to get on, the military people to get on it, and he let them fly out. Then he like forces her out of there. He tells her to leave, and she does. And then that's when she goes to and finally meets up with the main villain, this Jessica Chastain character, which we have seen a couple of times. So she's essentially an alien. She says she's from the Bari star system. They never even said her name. I don't think no character actually said her name in English. One of the other aliens might have said it, and it like showed up in the captions for trying to translate their language. But no character ever said her name. And this villain, her as the villain, was if I have any complaint about the movie, was the biggest complaint. Because it was just pointless. She didn't make sense. Was no motivation for this character. With the way that they had Jean struggling internally, like she could have been like the conflict could have stayed there and I would have been invested, right? And I think this person, they wasn't on screen for a long time, but their time on the screen was wasted and pointless and all of that. But got Jessica Chastain character telling Jean how this Phoenix Force had came and like destroyed their home, and now she wanted Jean to take this force and go back and create it. But in her mind, she wants her to create it here on Earth. So kill all the humans and the mutants and create this new system on Earth for her and her people. comic book wise, it's hitting on a little bit, right? Because the Dabari were a race of people, or a planet of people that lived in the system where evil Jean Grey, after the Dark Phoenix had turned evil, went and fed on their star or their sun. And so, like, same thing that would happen to us. If something happens to our sun, we on the earth will die, so they died. So it made a little bit of sense, but it didn't they didn't do it right, and they didn't give them enough time, didn't care about them. But that's probably the weakest part of the movie to me, was the villain, Jessica Chastain as the villain. Well, then you come and Beast has met up with Magneto. He's mad because Mystique is dead and he wants to go kill Jean. And so he tells Magneto, like, it was Mystique that she killed. It was Raven. And so now they're going back to kill Jean. And in my head, I'm thinking, Magneto, you could barely hold down this helicopter with her. You think you really finna go, like, beat her in a fight? And, of course, he went. Charles, them show up, and they have a mutant fight for a little bit, which was cool. It was all right. It was probably the weakest fight scene to me between when they was outside the house. For some reason, Magneto pulls up a subway cart, drives that into the house. Jean dispatches him pretty quickly, which you see most of that in, like, the trailers and the previews and all of that. And then Professor X finally makes his way in there. The wildest scene was she used her powers and made him walk up the stairs even though he's, like, paralyzed. That was, like, pretty horrible. But she did it. And then he got her to read his mind, and she really saw, like, hey, he do care about me. My daddy didn't want me, so yeah, he does love me. He cared for me. And then this led unto her wanting to give the power up, and so she started giving it to Jessica Chastain's character, but it's, like, killing her. And then Cyclops finally gets in and, like, shoots Jessica Chastain's character, but then the military's gotten there and they've, like, locked them all up and got their power. So then we get to the train sequence, which was really good, by the way. It was a really good fight scene. All the people using their powers. Storm, again, had a highlight on the train. Nightcrawler, even though character-wise, Nightcrawler is very religious. He's Catholic, I believe, very religious. I don't think Nightcrawler would have killed anybody the way he killed those aliens there. I don't know if he feel a little different because they aliens, but I don't believe Nightcrawler as a character would do that. You had them fighting the aliens, and then finally they get to Jean, wake her up, and she's realizing that it's a family she got to take care of. And then you have the really anticlimactic final fight, which showed her powers pretty nicely, but it was pretty, like, anticlimactic because it was, like, the whole time, like, was anybody even close to being as strong as her in the movie? Which there's not a lot of people who are as strong as her in the comic book universe, but it was just really anticlimactic because the main villain was anticlimactic. But it was nicely shot, I'll say. Then she's giving the girl the entire Phoenix Force, but she can't take it because it's killing her, because only Jean can hold it. But it's also killing everybody else too. So she flies up to the air and give it to her up there, and then they think she's dead. And that's the end of the movie. Ends back family. I think they have a shot. Look like Charles Xavier has retired. They renamed the school to Jean Grey School for Gifted Youngsters, which they have done that in the comics books. It's been like that for a little while. And Professor X is, like, retired and still looking like he's 30 when he should be 60, which that's a point I'm finna talk about, this age stuff. And yeah, and it looked like a scene like the end of The Dark Knight. When they're like off. But yeah, that's the end of the movie. It was not that bad, not horrible, but definitely some things that could have been done better. And so one of the things I'm never gonna forgive this movie for is the age and the time. So for some reason, these last 4 X-Men movies have been making each movie take place 10 years later. So First Class was in the 60s, Days of Future Past was in the 70s, Apocalypse, that horrible movie, was in the 80s, and now Dark Phoenix was in the 90s. That would have been fine, right? Had they did the things they need to do to make that seem believable. But they haven't, because none of the characters have aged. Magneto and Professor Xavier were about in their 30s. Like, Charles had a PhD. That's why his name is Professor Xavier. And that was in the 60s. And they should be about 60 years old and they look 30, 40. Because that's how old they are right now in real life. They only look like they've aged 10 years. For Mystique, that makes sense, right? Because of her whole mutations that she can change how she looks. But for Professor Xavier, for Magneto, for the man who played Beast, like, that dude looked like he's 25, 30. He's supposed to be about 52. Like, it is even worse with him because at least, because I think that guy is on like 27, 28. At least Fassbender and McAvoy are a little bit, they have aged some, but this guy looks way too young. And for someone who's supposed to be 50. And I'm just so upset that they keep doing it. That's one of the big problems with the movie. But overall, I will give the movie a 5 or 6. My expectations were not that high. But it was a enjoyable movie. I think I enjoyed parts of it. I really like the connection that they try to build between Jean Grey and Cyclops. I think they did the best that they can do. Honestly, from my standpoint, I don't think a Phoenix story can be told right in one movie. First off, the whole thing about Jean Grey as a Phoenix was because of how much impact that situation had on her relationships. But if we haven't had time to see these relationships build, which is another problem of the 10 years, that has an impact. I think the other thing is Jean Grey as the Phoenix was a hero first. So she was one of the weakest members on the team, got this great power, and then went and saved the whole world. Then time after that kind of got situation and became evil and started going on her own desires and impulses. And then after she went through all of that, ultimately sacrificed herself for her family. And I just don't think one movie can do that. I think it needs to be about 3. So as long as they keep going in that way, they will never be able to do the Phoenix storyline justice. I mean, in the comic books, the Phoenix storyline, including the Phoenix saga when she got the powers and saved the world, to the Dark Phoenix storyline, that happened over 10 years in the comic books. Even in the animated series, there was like a 5 or 6 part Phoenix saga storyline. Then there were like a few episodes when Jean was like considered dead or missing, and then they came back and had a whole nother 4 or 5 episodes about her being Dark Phoenix. So it's not something you can just do quickly. And so I think as a fan, as a Phoenix fan, it's funny because I'm wearing a feminism shirt today, but I think I'm a little upset with that because I know Kevin Feige and Marvel and Disney aren't going to touch this storyline because it's done been done twice, even though it's been done wrong. But there's no telling when the mutants are going to show up in the MCU. I will be waiting for it. I don't think this movie was like a big fitting into the X-Men movies, because we've had some great X-Men movies. Days of Future Past was really good. The X2 was really good. Logan was really good. And they couldn't shoot it as like this big finale, right? Even though that's how they was pubbing it. It's like, this is the big final battle of the X-Men. They didn't shoot it like that because back in 2017, nobody knew Disney was going to drop all that money and buy Fox, like buy a whole nother studio. And so, but I can say I enjoyed this movie. It's one I'm going to watch again. I'm going to probably go back to the movies and watch it again. I think it was one of the most beautifully shot X-Men movies. I think it has had some of the best action scenes in a main X-Men movie. That's not about Wolverine first bit. But yeah, those are my thoughts on X-Men Dark Phoenix. Let me hear yours. And yeah, and we'll go from there.